Awaken your spirit, chosen ones. When truth finally crawls out of the shadows, it doesn't whisper, it exposes. That's exactly what's happening now, because whether you were ready or not, the cat didn't just slip out of the bag, it sprinted out, knocked over the bag, and told everyone what that group and family have really been doing behind your back. And here's the part most people never believe until it happens to them. Studies show that people in tight-knit groups are more likely to combine forces to sabotage one individual if that person outgrows the role they're expected to stay in. Translation? When you evolved, they panicked, like a committee that suddenly realizes the quiet one has been taking notes the whole time. They didn't conspire because you were weak. They conspired because you became the walking evidence that their fake unity, fake morals, and fake loyalty were all stitched together with insecurity and jealousy. And once you stepped outside the identity they assigned you, they treated your growth like a crime scene. But here's the hilarious twist. These people put more effort into plotting against you than they've ever put into improving their own lives. If sabotaging you burned calories, they'd all have six-packs by now. This isn't just drama. It's exposure, revelation, a long overdue unveiling of how far they really went, how intentional it all was, and why the truth is finally breaking through everything they built to hide it. So sit tight, because today we're dissecting the real motives, the real agenda, and the real reason this group and family went to such astonishing lengths to cause pain for you. And trust me, the truth is far uglier and far more freeing than anything you imagined. Number one, they didn't hate you. They needed you to stay small to justify their own failure. The truth is, their issue was never about you personally. It was about what you represented. The moment you started growing, healing, and stepping into a stronger version of yourself, something in them felt exposed. You didn't have to say a word or brag about anything. Your progress alone became a spotlight shining on everything they hadn't done with their own lives. And instead of using that as motivation, they used it as ammunition. People who are comfortable in their own paths don't fear the growth of others. But people who feel stuck, stagnant, or secretly disappointed in themselves will do anything to keep you from outpacing them. Because if you rise too high, they know they can no longer pretend that their choices were fine or working. Your success makes their excuses collapse. So they tried to shrink you, not because you were a threat, but because your evolution forced them to confront truths they'd spent years avoiding. It's easier for them to say, "You've changed," than to admit, "You passed me." Holding you back becomes their way of holding on to their self-image. If they can convince you to shrink, they don't have to expand. That's why they needed you to stay predictable, humble, quiet, and dependent. The moment you outgrew those expectations, you disrupted the story they built around you. And because that story was tied to their own identity, they felt like they were losing control of more than just you. They felt like they were losing control of the narrative that kept their self-esteem intact. Deep down, they always knew what you were capable of. Maybe that's why they tried so hard to convince you that you were average. Maybe that's why they constantly downplayed your strengths or made your achievements seem small. Your potential scared them long before you ever stepped into it. So no, they didn't hate you. They feared what your growth said about them, and instead of rising with you, they tried to bury you so they wouldn't have to rise at all. Number two, they manufactured pain. Because your happiness invalidated the entire story they told about you, what they really couldn't handle wasn't just your success or your confidence, it was your happiness. Every smile, every moment of peace, every step forward you took was like a silent accusation against the narrative they had built around you. For years, they had painted a version of you that fit their comfort zone, dependent, flawed, or vulnerable. That version made them feel needed, superior, or in control. Your actual happiness tore that illusion apart. When someone is invested in seeing you struggle, your contentment becomes unbearable. It doesn't matter if it's subtle, just the fact that you're moving forward without their permission or validation shatters the story they relied on. If you were still stuck in their imagined limitations, everything would make sense in their world. But your joy is proof that their control was an illusion, and that their assumptions about you were wrong. That's why they didn't just ignore you, they went out of their way to make you hurt. Pain became a tool. Every insult, every slight, every passive-aggressive comment wasn't random. It was strategically placed to disrupt your peace, to remind you that they could still affect you. They wanted to make you question your reality, your worth, even your sanity. Because if they could make you feel unstable, they could make themselves feel stable. The irony is that the only thing they were really trying to control was their own fear of being exposed as small, inadequate, or irrelevant. They wanted to prove a point without ever admitting it. Your happiness didn't just threaten their comfort. It made their lives feel shallow, empty, and meaningless. Seeing you thrive without their interference was a mirror they could never look at directly. So they manufactured situations, words, and tensions that were meant to break you, not because you deserved it, but because your happiness made their false story impossible to continue. They weren't attacking your success or your skills. They were attacking the proof that they had been wrong all along. And in their desperation to rewrite reality, they revealed exactly how fragile their own story really was. Number 3, their unity. Wasn't love, it was a temporary alliance built on the mutual goal of containing you. What looked like loyalty or togetherness was never genuine. The smiles, the nods, the "we're in this together" energy, it was all an act. The moment you stepped outside of what they could control or predict, the illusion of unity collapsed. Their togetherness existed for one reason only: to contain you, to keep you in the box they had conveniently built for you. It wasn't about love, respect, or even friendship. It was about a shared, unspoken understanding that one person's rise threatened all of them, and they needed to band together to neutralize it. Every time they acted like a team, they were quietly measuring how far they could push you without exposing themselves. Every shared laugh or inside joke had a side purpose, reinforcing the idea that you didn't belong at the level you were reaching. Their group wasn't a family in the sense of connection. It was a tactical alliance, and you were the target that made their alliance necessary. Without you challenging their equilibrium, the need for unity would never have existed. The truth is, alliances built on fear or jealousy don't last. The second one of them saw a chance to benefit at your expense or to elevate themselves in the eyes of the others. The so-called unity crumbled. They didn't need to betray each other. They only needed to keep you in check. You were the reason they talked in hushed tones, coordinated actions, or silently agreed on rules that never applied to themselves. Your presence demanded cooperation they never actually wanted to practice. This temporary coalition worked because it relied on your absence of awareness. As soon as you began to see through the patterns, their unity started to crack. Every action they took to manipulate, control, or intimidate was a reminder that their togetherness was conditional, fragile, and self-serving. It was never about connection. It was about containment. And by the time you realized it, their little alliance had already revealed its true nature. A house built on insecurity and fear, with you at the center, shaking its foundation. Their unity was a mask, and the moment you refused to play the role they expected, that mask fell away completely. Number 4, the real reason they fought you was because you became the mirror they couldn't look into. The conflict you faced wasn't random or personal in the way it appeared. It was a reflection of something deeper. You became a mirror for them, showing parts of themselves they didn't want to see. Every step you took, every decision you made, every success or display of strength reflected their own fears, failures, and insecurities back at them. And most people can't handle looking in a mirror when it's uncomfortable. Instead of facing what they saw, they projected it onto you, turning their discomfort into attacks, manipulations, and attempts to control your path. When someone becomes a mirror for others, they don't just reveal the good, they reveal the gaps, the compromises, the lies people tell themselves to feel okay. Your clarity highlighted what they had ignored or avoided for years. That's why no amount of logic or reasoning could pacify their anger or jealousy. They weren't mad at what you did. They were terrified of the truths your life exposed in their own. Every word you spoke, every boundary you set, and every calm choice you made reminded them of the life they weren't living, the courage they lacked, and the authenticity they were too afraid to pursue. The attacks weren't meant to break you. They were attempts to avoid self-confrontation. They needed you to stumble so they could continue believing they were fine, that they were better, that they were safe in their mediocrity. But your persistence, resilience, and refusal to shrink made that impossible. You forced them to confront themselves without asking for it, without even meaning to. And when people are forced into self-reflection they haven't prepared for, they lash out because attacking the mirror feels safer than looking inward. Every fight, every criticism, every deliberate effort to unsettle you was a sign that you had entered their psychological blind spot. You became unavoidable. The more they tried to contain or discredit you, the clearer it became that the real battle wasn't with you, it was with themselves. And in trying to destroy what they saw in you, they revealed exactly what they feared in their own reflection. Number 5, you triggered the parts of them they hoped no one would ever notice. You didn't just step into your own life, you disrupted the carefully hidden patterns of theirs. There were sides of them they had worked hard to bury, insecurities, selfishness, envy, and fears that they kept tucked away under layers of charm, control, or manipulation. And when you entered their world fully aware and unshakable, those buried parts started surfacing. You became a trigger, not intentionally, not aggressively, but simply by existing as someone who refused to bend, comply, or fit into the story they wanted to tell about you. These people rely on a delicate illusion. They act composed, rational, and in control, but inside there are cracks they don't let anyone see. Your choices, your calm strength, and your refusal to conform poked at those cracks. Every time you set a boundary, every time you succeeded where they had failed, every time you stayed silent while observing the chaos they created, you brought those hidden weaknesses to light. And people who have invested years in hiding their flaws cannot tolerate someone who exposes them without trying. Your presence forced them to confront parts of themselves they were not ready to face. It made them anxious, defensive, and sometimes cruel. They lashed out because you made the invisible visible. Their manipulation, gossip, or sabotage wasn't just about hurting you. It was about controlling the reflection of their own weaknesses that you had inadvertently awakened. In short, you became a mirror for the shadow side of their personality, the side they desperately hoped nobody would ever notice. The more authentic, confident, and grounded you became, the more these hidden sides of them scrambled to respond. Every attempt to undermine you, to twist your words, or to manipulate the environment around you was a desperate effort to push back against the internal truths your presence revealed. They didn't attack you for what you did. They attacked you for who you made them see themselves as. And that fear, that panic, that exposure is what fueled everything they did against you. You didn't just trigger their insecurity, you exposed the parts of them they spent a lifetime pretending didn't exist. And that revelation was always going to hurt. Number 6, Their plan to hurt you was never spontaneous. It was strategically crafted over time. Nothing that happened to you was accidental. Every insult, every manipulation, every slight was calculated, measured, and timed to create maximum impact. They didn't stumble into hurting you. They designed it. Over weeks, months, even years, they observed, analyzed, and learned your habits, your reactions, and the areas where you were most vulnerable. What looks like chaos from the outside was actually a carefully orchestrated plan meant to destabilize you, to make you doubt yourself, and to convince you that their version of reality was the only one that mattered. They studied you the way a chess player studies an opponent, looking for patterns, weaknesses, and predictable moves. They tested your patience, pushed your boundaries, and monitored your responses. Every action was a piece in a larger puzzle, aimed at gaining control or triggering a reaction that justified their interference. You weren't just caught in random moments of cruelty. You were the target of intentional strategies designed to shake your confidence and question your own judgment. The chilling part is that they didn't act impulsively. They waited. They let opportunities grow, timed their attacks for when they would hurt the most, and layered small actions into a web that was hard to escape. Their goal wasn't just to hurt you in the moment. It was to erode your sense of reality, to manipulate perception, and to create a narrative where they always seemed right and you always seemed wrong. Even when it seemed like they acted out of anger or frustration, it was never just emotion. Every move was intentional, every word chosen to provoke or unsettle you, every moment of exclusion or sabotage carefully aligned with a larger design. They didn't just want you to feel pain. They wanted to control how, when, and why you felt it. The truth is, understanding the strategic nature of their actions gives you power. It shows that your reactions, resilience, and clarity were never predictable to them, and that despite their planning, they could not truly break you. Their entire effort, no matter how meticulously crafted, only highlights how unstoppable you were, and still are. Number 7. They weren't protecting the group. They were protecting the illusion that you were the problem. Everything they did under the guise of keeping the group together was never about the group itself. It was about maintaining a story they had carefully constructed, that you were the problem, the difficult one, the one who disrupted the peace. By labeling you as the source of tension, they diverted attention away from their own flaws, insecurities, and failures. Their actions weren't teamwork. They were a shield, a way to protect their fragile ego and the narrative that allowed them to feel justified in their behavior. They relied on a simple but powerful tactic. If everyone else believed you were the issue, no one would look closely at the cracks in the rest of the group. Your voice, your clarity, and your growing independence threatened to expose the truth, that the real problems weren't caused by you, but by their dishonesty, manipulation, and jealousy. Every criticism, every whisper, and every effort to turn others against you was designed to maintain the illusion that the group's problems existed because of you, rather than because of them. In reality, they were terrified that if their deception fell apart, their reputation, their control, and their sense of self would crumble. You challenged that illusion just by being yourself, calm, confident, and unwilling to conform to their narrative. They needed to make you the villain so they could continue living in their comfortable fiction, where no one had to admit failure, weakness, or wrongdoing. The irony is brutal. The more they tried to protect the group by attacking you, the more transparent they became. Their fear of exposure and their need to control perception was always louder than their concern for anyone else. And the more people saw through the manipulation, the clearer it became that the group's so-called harmony was a house built on lies, with you cast as the convenient scapegoat. Their entire strategy proves one thing. They weren't protecting anything meaningful, they were protecting themselves, and in doing so, they revealed the uncomfortable truth that your clarity and strength were the only things holding them accountable. Your presence didn't create the problem, they did. You were just the mirror showing it. Number 8, they resented you because you refused to play the role they assigned you. From the beginning, they had a script for who you were supposed to be. Quiet, compliant, grateful, and contained. That script was comfortable for them because it allowed them to predict your actions, control your reactions, and maintain the illusion that everything was under their authority. You were never expected to question, challenge, or rise beyond the limitations they imagined for you. And the moment you refused to follow that role, everything they had built around you started to unravel. Their resentment wasn't random, it was deeply personal. It wasn't about what you did or didn't do, it was about the fact that you didn't fit into the box they had created. Every time you spoke up, set a boundary, or pursued your own path, it was a reminder that you couldn't be controlled. And control was all they understood as power. You showed them that power doesn't come from dictating others, it comes from owning yourself. That revelation threatened them far more than any failure on their part. The refusal to play the assigned role exposed their dependence on your compliance. They had counted on predictability, on fear, or on your deference to maintain their own sense of stability. Your defiance, in their eyes, was not courage. It was a disruption of the order they relied on. And instead of confronting their own inability to adapt, they resented you for refusing to be the person they wanted you to be. The deeper truth is that they hated the freedom you displayed. Your ability to act according to your own values, your own understanding, and your own strength made them painfully aware of the limitations they had placed on themselves. Your presence highlighted everything they had sacrificed, ignored, or refused to pursue in their own lives. Their resentment then was not a reflection of you, it was a reflection of their fear and inadequacy. By refusing to play their role, you revealed the fragility of their control, the emptiness of their authority, and the illusion they depended on to feel important. In standing in your own power, you became the measure by which their own failure was undeniable, and that is exactly what they couldn't tolerate. Number 9, they punished you for qualities they secretly wished they had. The irony in their behavior is brutal. Every time they attacked, criticized, or tried to manipulate you, it was often because they saw in you the very traits they secretly envied. Strength, confidence, clarity, independence. These were qualities they had either lost along the way or never developed. Seeing you live fully in those traits was like holding up a mirror to their own shortcomings, and they couldn't handle the reflection. So instead of acknowledging it, they punished you. They tried to convince themselves that your abilities were threatening, annoying, or undeserved, but deep down they knew the truth. They recognized the power in your self-discipline, the calm in your decisions, the courage in your choices, and the consistency in your growth. And that recognition is uncomfortable because it forces them to confront the fact that they had denied themselves those same qualities. Their attacks weren't born out of logic, they were born out of jealousy and fear, disguised as criticism or control. Every effort to undermine you was really an attempt to quiet that reminder of what they lacked. By making you feel small, uncertain, or wrong, they hoped to project their own inadequacy outward. But no matter how loud their actions, they couldn't erase the reality. The traits they punished in you were the very traits that proved how much they had settled for less in their own lives. You became a living example of what they could have been, and instead of feeling inspired or motivated, they felt threatened. The truth is, they never had to be your enemy. If they had embraced your success as a reflection of possibility rather than a threat, they could have learned, grown, and perhaps changed. But jealousy is stubborn, and fear is louder than ambition. So instead, they chose to punish you, not for your mistakes, but for the very qualities they wished they possessed. In doing so, they revealed far more about themselves than about you. Your strength didn't create conflict. It exposed the gap between their reality and their desire, and that is a truth they could never tolerate quietly. Number 10. Their betrayal was the only language they had left to express their jealousy. When someone betrays you, it often feels personal, unpredictable, and cruel. But the reality is far more revealing. Their betrayal wasn't random, and it wasn't about you. It was about them. They reached a point where admiration, respect, or even silent acknowledgement of your growth became impossible. The jealousy inside them had grown so loud, so insistent, that it needed an outlet, and betrayal was the only language they knew to express it. They couldn't tell you, "I'm envious of your strength," or "I'm frustrated that you're living the life I can't." That level of honesty would have required reflection, self-awareness, and courage, 3 things they weren't willing to summon. So instead, they acted. They twisted situations, shared lies, withheld truth, or manipulated circumstances in ways designed to hurt you. Every act of betrayal carried a hidden message. They couldn't be happy for you, so they had to make you unhappy instead. The irony is that betrayal often exposes far more about the betrayer than the betrayed. Their actions revealed fear, insecurity, and an inability to cope with someone else's growth. Each calculated slight, each hidden agenda, and each moment of dishonesty was a projection of their inner struggle. They were angry not because of what you did, but because of what your existence reminded them they had never done, or could not do. Betrayal became their tool because it allowed them to convert emotion into action. Instead of admitting envy or disappointment in themselves, they turned that energy outward, creating situations where they could inflict control, doubt, or pain. In their mind, hurting you justified their own failure to evolve. What makes this so extraordinary is that your strength didn't trigger their betrayal. It highlighted it. The loyalty they lacked, the courage they avoided, and the maturity they refused to embrace were all illuminated by your presence. And because they had no other way to process those feelings, betrayal became their only expression. Every deceit, every act of manipulation, every quiet, underhanded move was less about you and more about the storm of jealousy they could no longer contain. Number 11. They targeted you because you were the only one. They couldn't manipulate. Everything they did, every word they said, and every action they took was built on control. They were masters of influence in their circles, experts at bending people to their will, at twisting perceptions, and at creating narratives that suited them. But you were different. You didn't respond to their tactics the way everyone else did. You didn't falter under pressure. You didn't bend for approval, and you didn't let their words dictate your reality. You were unshakable, and that alone made you their target. They saw you as a problem because control is what they understand, and you didn't give it to them. Where others complied out of fear, comfort, or habit, you stood firm. Where others questioned themselves, you questioned the narrative. They couldn't manipulate your emotions, your decisions, or your path, and that was infuriating. To them, control was power, and you made it impossible to feel powerful without breaking the rules of their own game. That's why their actions became so intentional, so persistent, and so carefully calculated. They didn't attack randomly, they attacked strategically. They studied your responses, looking for cracks, for patterns, for ways to influence you, but every attempt failed, and failure was unacceptable in their world. The only way they could regain the illusion of control was to keep trying, to escalate, and to bring everyone else into their efforts to bend you to their version of reality. The deeper truth is that their targeting reveals exactly how unprepared they were for someone like you. People who can be manipulated rarely inspire fear, resentment, or obsession. You, however, represented a reality they could not alter, a mind they could not bend, and a presence they could not ignore. Their energy, their plotting, and their attempts to destabilize you all stemmed from this frustration. You weren't just resisting them, you were exposing the fragility of their control. And that is why they fixated on you, not out of hatred or random spite, but because you were the one person in the room they couldn't touch, the one person whose freedom and clarity they could not compromise, no matter how hard they tried. Number 12. The pain they caused was meant to break your identity, not just your mood. The attacks, manipulations, and betrayals weren't random. They were aimed much deeper than your emotions. They didn't just want to make you angry, frustrated, or sad. Their goal was to shake the very foundation of who you are. Every insult, every slight, every effort to gaslight or control you was designed to make you question your sense of self, your worth, and your place in the world. They wanted you to doubt your instincts, second-guess your decisions, and even wonder if your feelings and perceptions were valid. This is why their actions often felt relentless. They weren't just trying to provoke a reaction. They were trying to redefine reality around you, to create a version of yourself that was smaller, weaker, or more dependent. The strategies were calculated. Isolate you from support, undermine your confidence, twist the truth, and make you feel like nothing you did mattered. The goal was to chip away at your identity slowly, like erosion on rock, until you felt unrecognizable even to yourself. The danger of this approach is that it can be subtle. At first it feels like minor irritations or misunderstandings, but over time the cumulative effect is far more sinister. By targeting your beliefs, values, and self-perception, they hope to make you conform to the version of reality they controlled. They wanted to shape your identity to fit their narrative so that you would stop challenging them and start doubting yourself. What's extraordinary is that this plan backfired. The deeper they tried to strike, the stronger your awareness became. Each attempt to distort your reality only highlighted your resilience and clarity. The pain they intended to use as a weapon became a test, and you emerged not just unbroken, but more anchored in who you are. Their attacks revealed their desperation and fear, not your weakness. The truth is that they weren't attacking a mood, a moment, or a choice. They were attacking the essence of who you are. And in doing so, they showed that your identity is untouchable, your strength undeniable, and your presence unstoppable. The more they tried, the clearer it became that nothing they did could redefine you. Number 13. They feared your potential more than they respected your humanity. The truth is raw. They weren't concerned with who you were as a person. They were terrified of what you could become. Your potential posed a threat to everything they had built around themselves, their comfort zones, and their illusions of superiority. They weren't afraid of hurting you as a human being. They were afraid of the unstoppable force you represented once you refused to be confined by their expectations. Your growth, your ambition, your clarity, they all exposed their limitations, and that fear drove every action they took. People who fear potential don't see it as inspiration. They see it as a danger. Every time you stepped closer to the life you deserved, it forced them to confront their own choices, their compromises, and the life they had allowed themselves to settle for. Instead of respecting the person you were becoming, they tried to limit it, sabotage it, or control it. Your existence threatened the stories they had told themselves to feel safe, so they resorted to manipulation, ridicule, and interference to maintain the illusion that you could be contained. Their actions weren't random. They were deliberate attempts to restrain the inevitable. They tried to make your ambitions seem too big, your confidence too bold, your growth too disruptive. They wanted you to shrink so they could feel secure. Every attack, every attempt at control, and every whisper meant to undermine you was a sign that they understood the magnitude of your potential far better than you might have realized at first. And yet their fear was powerless against the reality of who you were becoming. The more they tried to hold you back, the more visible your strength, intelligence, and resilience became. They were left exposed, not you. Their attempts to manipulate your path only revealed their insecurity and inability to rise to the level you naturally reached. In the end, their fear of your potential outweighed any respect for your humanity. They didn't fear losing you. They feared being shown up by you. And that fear, more than anything else, revealed the stark truth. You were never meant to fit into the small world they tried to confine you to. Your potential was always bigger, brighter, and unstoppable. Number 14. Their downfall began the moment you stopped needing their approval. Everything they tried to do, every manipulation, every lie, every calculated move, was built on the assumption that your validation mattered. They relied on your reactions, your engagement, and your concern for their opinions to feel powerful. As long as you needed their approval, their influence had weight. But the moment you stopped seeking it, the entire foundation they depended on began to crumble. Your independence stripped them of control, and with control gone, their power evaporated. They thrived on the illusion that you were still within reach, that your choices could be shaped or influenced by them. Every effort they made to intimidate, manipulate, or undermine you worked only as long as you responded to it. Your silence, your clarity, and your refusal to react according to their expectations were devastating to them. You stopped giving them the fuel they needed, the fuel of your attention, your validation, and your worry, and suddenly all their schemes lost meaning. This is why their anger, resentment, and desperation often intensified just as you stepped into true independence. They were accustomed to the idea that you would bend, justify, or explain yourself for their sake. When you refused to do so, it revealed a truth they could no longer hide. Their power was never real. It was entirely dependent on your participation. Once you removed yourself from that dynamic, their influence became powerless. The beauty of this moment is in its quiet but undeniable strength. You didn't need to prove anything, confront anyone, or fight back. You simply stopped playing by their rules. Their downfall wasn't immediate, but it was inevitable. Without your validation to prop up their control, their carefully constructed narratives began to collapse. Their alliances, their manipulations, and their judgments lost weight and credibility. Ultimately, your independence exposed them for what they were, individuals clinging to authority that existed only because you allowed it. Their downfall began the instant you stopped needing their approval, and from that point forward, your freedom became their undoing. Your power, clarity, and self-reliance didn't just protect you. They dismantled the entire structure they built to contain you. Conclusion: what you've just seen is the unfiltered truth behind every action, every word, and every attempt they made to hurt you. They weren't random, they weren't harmless, and they weren't acting out of love or concern. Every move was rooted in fear, insecurity, jealousy, and a desperate need to maintain control over a story that no longer served them. From trying to keep you small, to manufacturing pain, to betraying and targeting you, they revealed their own fragility, not your weakness. The extraordinary part of this journey is that every attack, every betrayal, every manipulation became a mirror reflecting not just who they were, but who you were, and who you were becoming. You were the one unwilling to be confined, the one refusing to play their role, the one whose potential, clarity, and independence exposed the cracks they spent a lifetime hiding. And in doing so, you not only survived, you rose stronger, sharper, and more untouchable than they ever anticipated. Your growth, your calm, and your unwavering presence dismantled their illusions. Every attempt to break you only showcased your resilience. Every scheme meant to contain you became evidence of your unstoppable nature. You didn't need their approval, their validation, or their permission to rise. And the moment you stepped fully into your own power, their influence collapsed. This is the truth. Nothing they did could stop the inevitable. You becoming fully yourself. Their fear, jealousy, and desperation were simply signs that you had transcended the limitations they tried to impose. And that is where your real victory lies. Not in fighting them, but in evolving beyond their reach, untouchable and undeniable. If this message resonated with you, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more insights that cut through the noise. Like, comment, and share this video to help others see the truth behind manipulation, control, and the power of standing fully in your own strength. Your journey doesn't just inspire yourself, it illuminates the path for everyone watching. Stay awakened, chosen ones.